Different methods of teaching. Students have different intellectual capacities and learning styles that favor or hinder knowledge accumulation. Teachers are interested in ways to effectively cause students to understand better and learn. Lecture with discussion. Strength involves audience at least after the lecture. Audience can question, clarify, and challenge. Limitation. Time may limit discussion period. Quality is limited to quality of this question and discussion. Preparation requires that question be prepared prior to discussion.
All right, so last time we were talking about quantum theory, and why don't we actually review some of the stuff that we had talked about last time before I actually start talking further about Pauli's exclusion principle. So let me ask you a question here, a few questions here about the stuff that we covered last time. And again, think about these questions yourself first, and then I'm going to ask you to talk to the person next to you, and then I'll poll the class. The goal of this course is to really teach students some effective problem-solving strategies, and also to help them develop some logical thinking skills. And of course, that has to be done in the context of teaching them some physics concepts. D? E? Okay, it looks like that most people remember it correctly, that the angular momentum can only take certain discrete values, right?
Once she introduces a certain topic, she'll talk about it for a little while, give us a bunch of equations on the board for our personal notes, and then she'll pose a question to the whole class. She'll ask everybody to talk to each other, the neighbors, the people that are sitting around them, their friends or whatever, and then she'll take a poll of the whole class to see if people are actually understanding the concept. If people aren't really getting it, she'll continue to talk about it and do it again until she understands that most of the people get what she's talking about.
Okay, it seems like that some people think that C is the right answer and some people think that D is the right answer. The correct answer here is C. I strongly believe that students have to be actively engaged in the learning process. They have to always keep monitoring their own learning. And I think that it's especially important in physics for students to be asked questions all the time, so that they actually know what they are really understanding. So this is the target material from which X-rays are going to be emitted. Now, what really does happen? What do you think will happen if I have a very, very high voltage? And notice that there is this filament here and there's vacuum. In between here in this region, there's just vacuum. If you close this circuit, as soon as you close the switch, what do you expect will happen? And I also believe that students can learn a lot by talking to each other. Because when students are talking to each other, it gives them an opportunity to, first of all, organize their own thoughts. Because when you have to, articulate your thoughts, you better actually be clear about what you want to say to other people, in order to make it understandable to them.
That's one of the main reasons why I like this class, especially since it's 2 hours. You don't get, she makes it hard for you to fall asleep by getting you involved in it and by her moving around. And that's one of the reasons why I like the class.
She also puts more emphasis on the concepts in physics instead of making it more of a plug-and-chug course where you basically have to memorize all the equations and know what each variable stands for. It's not so much about that in this class. It's about, how did these equations come about, and, if some variable changes, how does it affect something else?
You can only stretch students' knowledge a little bit beyond what they already know. And so the thing is, we have to always be very aware of where the students are at a particular time on an average, so that we can actually target our instruction just a little bit above that, and then a little bit above that, a little bit above that. It is particularly important that we keep in mind what students already know and how we can stretch their knowledge and make them come to exactly where we want them to be at the end of the course. It must have a higher frequency, which means it must have a higher energy, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Because energy is Planck's constant times the frequency. Focus should be on learning by students, not on really teaching by instructors. It always has to be, how can I maximize the learning?
Lecture method. Strength. Present factual material in direct, logical manner contains experience which inspires stimulating thinking to open discussion, useful for large groups. Limitation. Experts are not always good teachers. Audience is passive. Learning is difficult to gauge. Communication in one way.
Mr. Grimes, mathematics teacher, is displeased with the progress of his 9th grade class in mathematics.
You see what low grades you made on your weekly mathematics test? More than half of you failed. Most of those who passed just got by. Nobody had 100%. This is the poorest class I've had in a long, long time. Most of you have no foundation at all. Now, the trouble's with your attitude. You don't pay enough attention in class. You don't do enough work outside of it. You don't know what the word study means. You haven't the slightest idea. Don't you realize that mathematics is an important subject? I tell you right now that unless you get over your lazy habits and come up to the standards I've set for this class, many of you will have the pleasure of repeating this course next semester. Well, what is it?
Panel of experts. Strength. Allow experts to present different opinions. Can provoke better discussion than a one-person discussion. Frequent change of speaker keeps attention from lagging. Limitation. Experts not be good speakers. Personality may overshadow content. Subject may not be in logical order. Videotape. Strength. Entertaining way of teaching content and raising issues. Keep grounds attention. Looks professional. Stimulate discussion. Limitation. Can raise too many issues to have a focused discussion. Discussion may not be full participation, only as effective as following discussion.
Hello there. Nice to see you again. Thank you. All right, go ahead. Okay, I'm going to tell you about complex numbers today. Complex numbers have a real part and an imaginary part. You know what? You're making me nervous. Stand there. Could you just go hide somewhere? Wait, are you talking to me? Yes, you. Just like get out of the way somewhere, because I don't want to see. But it makes me nervous to have two of us here. Like this? Okay, good. Stay there. Thank you. Okay. As I was saying, complex numbers have an imaginary part and a... Hey, I see you there. Go away. Complex numbers have an imaginary part and a real part. I see it's written over there on the whiteboard. If you take a real number plus an imaginary number, then you end up with a complex number. Now, the most important thing about complex numbers is if you take a imaginary number like I... Hey, what's wrong with the connection? That last thing I said was really important. Let me rewind it again so you can see it. So if you take I times I squared, you end up with -1. So that's true for any of the imaginary numbers, because complex numbers are made up... Hey, what is this thing? I don't know what this is, but I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm just going to get rid of this. And so it won't happen again. Let me move this over all the way to the... There we go. Now it won't... You know what? Wait a second here. Did you start me an Internet Explorer? What were you thinking? You know what? I got to start a better browser here. Let's see here. Okay. Much better. Okay. Now, back to complex numbers. They have the imaginary part and a real part. But you know what? This has gotten me thinking. I'm having a bit of a philosophical crisis here. You know, maybe you really do need a real teacher. I feel like the imaginary part... Well, I'm a real teacher. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have to turn it back over to you. I don't know if I can do this anymore. So, okay, back to you. Thanks. All right. Well, thanks anyway. Hey, excuse me. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to be a distraction. Sorry about that. Actually, you know what? Let me just exit out of this, and then we can... All right, that's a good idea.
Class discussion. Strength. Pull ideas and experience from group. Effective after a presentation, film, or experience that need to be analyzed. Allows everyone to participate in an active process. Limitation. Not practical with more than 20 people. Few people can dominate. Others may not participate. It's time consuming, can get off the track.
morning to you.
Connect. I work on
I am so sorry. Let me connect you to
Bird. Know how to read it? Again, I'm repeating the same thing. You know how to read it, so don't read it fast. Focus on your pronunciation, okay?
I often go to a rock concert.
On Thursday, I often go to a rock concert.
To a rock concert.
On Thursday, I often go to a rock concert.
Thursdays. Fridays. What do you do on Fridays?
Lend me with a hand my problem.
You're asking a question, so you need to have intonation. You want to raise your voice at the end. So, what is up? Good.
Pair with a partner and read the dialogue. One person will play Mary and the other person will play Anne. Okay? And I will go around to listen to your pronunciation. It is very important to speak slowly. Again, I know you know how to read, and it's very easy to read fast. But in order to speak with someone and for someone to understand you, you need to be able to speak. So let's go ahead and start. Go ahead and start. You two over here, and you three. Okay, so you come in. Go ahead and begin.
With things like cooking and chores, as well as outside of the house, with things like working on bridge. Everyone feels that way? No.
Happy family is the woman, the wife is raise the children, or the man
I think money belongs to the material life, belongs to the stuff. At your house, the saying that money is a good servant, but a bad boss. You are bad guy. They are con nhiều cô ấy hay có nhiều ăn hay có nhiều đồ đạc nhiều không? Thì nhiều. They are cả ba thì là nhiều they hiểu không? Ai không hiểu? Giơ tay lên. Nếu you he are đúng hay sai? Còn nhiều. Còn nhiều. He is. Nếu hỏi we are đúng hay sai?
Let's go over some words that everybody has a little bit of difficulties with. Built. Good. Front yard. A front yard is the area in front of a house, sometimes with a lawn. Okay, is that clear? Obviously. So clearly, something that...
Cảm thấy là gì? Feel.
discussion. Strength. Allow participation of everyone. People often more comfortable in small groups can reach groups consensus. Limitation. Need careful thought as to purpose of groups. Groups may get sidetracked. Preparation. Needs to prepare specific tasks or questions for a group to answer.
I always make a point of using small groups in my classes, and I use them because it gives them a chance to get to know each other. They learn each other's names and they introduce each other and whatnot, and then that interaction continues over the course of the semester to the point that I think they really know each other and generally, speaking, enjoy each other. I want them to teach each other at a certain level. I'm surrendering the classroom at that point. When I use this in the smaller classes, and in fact when I use it in larger classes, much of the time actually is spent in the group itself, and less time is actually spent reporting out, right? Now I do have them report out, what did you talk about, and then I'll serve as their scribe, and then I'll add, and amplify and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, pedagogically, the action was in the group itself. And I don't need to have to be the one listening in on the conversation. I don't need to know what they said. And I don't necessarily need them to report out everything they said. I know that they said it. They had that opportunity, and I trust them to have stayed on point. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they talk. Some groups talk longer than other groups do about the topics. But that's a way to, again, to kind of surrender the classroom a little bit in the interest of getting them to invest more of themselves. The challenge that I face in a lot of my teaching, especially at the 200 level, is that I have 90-person classes with a grader, which means it's a lecture class 3 days a week. It is not, there's no recitation sections for them to break out into small groups. So how do I defeat anonymity? How do I, get beyond this kind of depersonalized environment of the large lecture hall, sometimes way larger than 90 students, right? It's a lecture hall for 165 and they're all over the place. Well, what I've gotten to the point of doing is that especially when they have essays that they have to turn in, I will have them break into groups of their own making in this huge lecture hall and talk about what they wrote. And what I tell them is that, you spent all this time writing these papers, and I know part of you just wants to unload it. I mean, that's a natural feeling, is to be done with it. But you've invested this much time, you should talk to each other about what you learned. And you wouldn't believe how those rooms erupt in conversation, where people all of a sudden talk to each other about what they had written. And so what you wind up is a classroom with 90 students broken into, 9, 10 groups, smaller groups, and they're all talking about these essays. And I basically do the same thing, is I then have a moment where they can share, if they want to share, what they had talked about. What I love about it is the students always, surprise me in a positive way with regard to the degree to which they really have engaged the books, and small groups are just a chance for them to make it purposeful. Don't just write it down and hand it to me and I'll give you my comments back and we'll never say anything to each other about it. Talk to each other, and then let's all talk about it together, and then we'll hand it in, right? And then I'll assess you. But I just think it makes the material more meaningful that way.
Case study. Strength. Develops analytic and problem-solving skills. Allows for exploration of solutions for complex issues. Allows students to apply new knowledge and skills. Limitation. People may not see relevance to own situation. Insufficient information can lead to inappropriate results.
Techniques of teaching. And we're going to start with a quote. This is an interesting quotation because it contains within it a philosophical argument, and it's a philosophical argument of the way in which we learn. Basically, this one is saying that the intelligence of their own children comes about due to a natural process. So this one could be said to be due to nature. This is exactly the opposite of this one, which is saying that their teaching, the environment that we create, creates that intelligence. So this one can be said to be due to nurture. And this argument, nature versus nurture, has been going on for thousands of years. These two viewpoints are two ends of a scale, or a continuum if you like, and every teaching methodology that's ever been created has its starting point somewhere on this scale. For example, if a particular methodology has its starting point here, then that would be 50% due to nature and 50% is due to nurture. Before looking at the methods or approaches themselves, there are some terms that we need to define. These are the approach, the method, or the technique. Basically, these are hierarchical. The approach is an overriding set of principles that a method can actually make use of, whereas the technique are the things that we actually do in the classroom to approach that method. So these three words are going to appear during the presentation. Again, for each of either the approaches or the methodologies, we're going to ask 4 questions. And those questions So be it an approach or a method, for each of those things, where did it come from? What's its background? What does it involve when we're talking about actually in the classroom, in other words, techniques? What is positive about it? What appears to work about that methodology or approach? And what is negative? What doesn't work so well?
Inductive and deductive method. Inductive teaching method or process goes from the specific to the general and may be based on a specific experiment or experimental learning exercise. Deductive teaching method progress from general concepts to specific use or application.
All right. So here we have Dee Dee, and Dee likes to explain the rules and then play the game. And the game we're talking about is language. Ian likes to just play the game. Likes to just play the game and let you figure out the rule. So, Didi likes to explain the rules and then play the game. Ian likes to just play the game and let you figure out the rules. So we just talked about an example, an inductive grammar example. Do you know what the other type, another approach to grammar is called? Deductive. Good. All right, so you guys did your homework. So which one is Didi? Deductive. Yeah, good. All right, good. So she's deductive, and that makes Ian inductive. Yeah, right. Inductive. Okay, so now let me ask you, which one do you want to play with? Who do you prefer to play with? You like a Didi person or an Ian person? You like Ian, so you'd rather play the game and figure it out?
Didi.
Didi? Okay. Who says Didi? Raise your hand. Who wants to have the rules first? Okay. And then Ian, just go ahead and play the game. Okay, all right, fine. So let's look at some pluses and some minuses for each of them. What's good about Ian? What do you think is good, or maybe not so good about Ian's approach?
Takes a long time.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll put down time consuming. Takes a long time. Other thoughts? Which one do you think would be more natural? Inductive. Ian. Okay, good. All right. So it's more natural. What about which one do you think would actually? You can kind of take some of the opposites. So instead of saying time consuming over here, you can say that it's probably it's more direct, faster, maybe. What about some negatives? Ah, that's really good. Okay, so this is forgettable. So let's look at the opposite. Wait, not forgettage. Forgettable. Forgettable. Thank you for helping me out. Okay, so over here we would have.
Longer, last.
Huh? Last longer, so memorable. Memorable. Okay, so memorable. Why do you think it's memorable?
Because you're actually doing it.
Good. All right, so memorable. You're actually not only are you actually doing it, but you're also kind of discovering it. Actually doing it, and it's sort of what's called discovery learning. Discovery learning. So what happens here, this is where you go like this, you go, I get it. Yeah, it's this sort of, the events. So one of the things that I think might make it memorable is that it's often fun. It's often fun. Other thoughts? No? How about, which one do you think would be more confusing? Okay, all right. So it could be confusing. It could be confusing. What about, which one from a teacher's perspective do you think takes more effort? Why?
He has to explain.
He has to explain the rule. Okay, all right, interesting. So we'll say more teacher energy. 'Cause I was actually thinking about over here, I think it requires more creative energy, more creativity. And the problem with this is that not everyone's creative. Not all teachers are creative. So if you're in a situation where you need to take an inductive approach, it could be quite challenging. Let's see, what are some other ideas? Something you've learned in your book, this might help you to appreciate it. There's this idea of learner autonomy. What's learner autonomy?
Self-learning.
Self-learning, yeah, and self-motivation to learn. So Ian is more supportive of that. He's kind of letting you discover things and encouraging you to figure out things on your own. Now the activity that we did was inductive. And what we're going to do now is we'll look at a few activities, some contrast the two. On this worksheet, we have, remember the game that we did, that activity that you guys did that's like so? Which one doesn't belong? Okay, in this case, which one doesn't belong? The triangle, okay, why? Different shapes, got straight edges, and points, and so on. Well, the same thing works here, but you have 5. So you have A, B, C, D, and E. Each one of these sentences, they're all pretty close to each other, but one of them doesn't belong. Which one doesn't belong? So I want you to work on your table groups, and then decide which one of these 5 doesn't belong. Okay? All right, so who are you working with? Okay, and out of these 5, how many are you going to take out? 1. Why? Because it doesn't belong.
Demonstration method. Demonstration method or doing method. Number 1, demonstrate. Number 2, step-by-step procedure using the exact physical procedure if possible. Number 3, explain the reason for and the significance of each step. Tips. To be more effective, plan the demonstration. Use enlarged device or training aids. When practical, allow trainees to repeat the procedure in a hands-on practice session. Immediately correct the trainee's mistake.
Now let's talk about another method of instruction, and that's the demonstration performance method of instruction. And that's how you teach a specific skill. Students learn physical or mental skills by actually performing those skills under supervision. And once again, that's the demonstration performance method, and it's for presenting a specific skill. Now let's take a look at the essential phases of the demonstration performance method. Let's assume you want to teach landings. First of all, the instructor will make an explanation of what we're trying to accomplish in this lesson, and then the instructor will demonstrate. He might say something like, let me try one. I always do that in case it doesn't come out real well. I say, well, let me try one again. So the student or the instructor does a demonstration. Then the student does a performance while the instructor supervises. And student performance and instructor supervision are performed concurrently. And the reason for that is, as an instructor, you would like to survive this lesson. So you better be supervising that student intentionally, first of all, if it's their first landings especially. And then finally, the last thing, the last phase of this is evaluation. You always want to do an evaluation.
Reinforce proper procedure. Patience is a virtue.